Meantime, before I do, I want to say hi to Amnan.
Hello.
How are you? Oh,
Been
everybody's
better.
coughing. You doing all right?
Everything's fine.
Everything's good?
Yeah.
Good. You having your little allergy going on?
Yeah. It'll go away. I'll live.
Go. Yes, you will.
Yep.
So let me tell you a little story. Don't you just love these stories that you have absolutely no control over, and they just kind of happen in spite of who you are, where you are, what you're doing, or anything, or what you expect? So I have this beautiful woman scheduled to do the show today. She's an artist from California. She's magnificent. She is a 72-year-old blogger. Her husband is a film director. She's lived an extraordinary life. And I spoke to her on Saturday to help get her ready on Skype because she had not used Skype in a long time and it wasn't working. And then I spoke to her yesterday and it wasn't working. So I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? This was like California time. It's like lunchtime. And for me, it's like dinner time. And I'm like, what do? I had no idea what I was going to do the show about today. And honestly, it's really hard just to kind of grab anything because you just don't want to just grab anything. You want it to be just right because you're here. And I want it to be right for you and I want it to be right for me. So I didn't know what to do. And I figured, you know what? I'm just going to let it happen, let it unfold. I know I'm going to go to bed and I'm going to wake up in the morning with some brilliant idea, not because it's my idea, but because it comes kind of down into me and I'll get some kind of a message. So I woke up this morning and one of the first things I did was open up my email. This is right before working out with my husband, which was going to be at 5:30, 5:45. And I see this email from this beautiful young woman that I know. I know her mother. I know her brother. I worked with her brother when he was like 11 or 12 as his coach. And the family was just the most colorful, beautiful family. And I get an email from Marie Garlock, that her mother, this whole memorial thing about her mother, which I had no idea that her mother passed away. I knew that her mother had cancer and that it metastasized and, it's been going on for several years, but I had no clue that this woman passed away in June, and my heart sank. I was like, how could I not know this? So with that, my husband and I went into the back room and we start working out and lifting weight, and lifting the weight reminded me of this woman because I remember working out with her. I was at a little club and lifting weight and she was in my mind, and I've been thinking about her. Every time I go to Whole Foods, I think about her because I used to bump into her all the time at Whole Foods. And I've been thinking about her and I just hadn't called her. It's one of those things, So with that, I turned around to my husband and I said, you know what? I'm going to do the show today on making lemonade out of lemons because that's something that I had to do to come up with a show idea. And that's something that Barbara Garlock, she should rest in peace, exactly what she did. She always, 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 always made lemonade out of everything that she had to go through. She was this magnificent poet, writer. She was colorful. She wore the most brightest colors. You could see her a mile away. She had the most beautiful, angelic smile. So I said that to Mark, and I was going to base my show on doing the show on making lemonade. So with that, I go in my room and I dutifully sit down at my computer and start to put a show together about lemonade. So where did this whole thing come from about making lemonade from lemons? I had no idea. Well, I did some research. And what I came up with was that there was a Christian writer back in 1915 who was writing about a dwarf who he made his life the best he could possibly make it. He made life out of lemons. He made his life out of lemonade. And he made this beautiful life happen. And that's where the terminology came from. This Christian writer, Albert Hubert, spoke of this dwarf, and he said he picked up the lemons that fate had sent him and started a lemonade stand, which I thought was just so beautiful. And a lot of people think that Dale Carnegie created the slogan, but not so. He did create, if you have a lemon, make lemonade, but it was originally this Christian writer. So I thought that was pretty cool. And so I started doing some more research and started thinking about it myself. And so what do we do when we're taking lemons and creating lemonade? Well, like Mark turned around this morning and he said, it's your intent. Your intent takes lemons and creates lemonade. And sometimes you don't know what's going to happen. You have no idea that you're even going to have lemonade. You don't know you're even going to have lemons. You start off thinking everything's going to be lemonade. And then all of a sudden it takes a big shift. And so one of the shifts today is going to be that I called Marie and asked her if she would be on the show today. And she said she would. So hopefully she'll be calling in, and hopefully she'll get her brother to call in as well. The interesting thing is she told me that she wanted to get a hold of me. And last night she's been trying to get into her mother's emails and had no password that worked. And finally, she got into her password last night and was able to send out an email. And that is how I connected with this woman this morning. And so it was almost like amazing that my guest, who I so wanted to be on and share her with you, couldn't do it. And then lo and behold, comes this email with this message. And so if she's able to, she's here. She's okay. Oh, she's in the chat. Oh, I'm talking about you, Marie. Okay. You can call in at 919-518-9773, or you can Skype in with us on computers 2, that's the number 2, K voice, if you want to do that. Or you can even maybe come in on video. No? Okay, just voice. Computers 2K voice, if you got me. Okay, she's been listening. And I'm so delighted to have her come on because she's like this magnificent flower. And she's going to call in, and I want to talk because the stories that she was telling me this morning about her mother was incredible. And I had no idea that we were even going to do this show. And then I was telling Chris about things this morning, Chris, who was our co-producer, and I told her, she said, oh, you're going to dedicate the show to Barbara. And I said, yes, I am. And then all these things started falling into place. So she's going to call in, and hopefully we'll get Hunter too. I don't know, but hopefully she will. So in the meantime, here's a quote I want to just share with you about making lemonade. I believe that if life gives you lemons, you should make lemonade and try to find somebody whose life has given them vodka and have a party. And that was by Ron White. So that was pretty cool, huh? And then here's another one. If life gives you lemons, don't settle for simply making lemonade. Make a glorious scene at a lemonade stand. And that is exactly what Barbara Garlock did. She made a magnificent scene wherever she went. And she left such wonderful memories that, okay, so she's going to call in on Skype. And so we're waiting for her to come in. So it's very exciting. But you know what? We all have these things happen. And you can't always plan everything. And that's part of turning something from lemons to lemonade. Sometimes you just have to let go of it and allow it to happen. And you don't always have that opportunity. So, hello. All right, we're connected. Marie?
Yes, hello.
Hey, honey, how are you doing? Marie?
I'm great. Here, I'll pass it on the recording.
Okay, honey, how are you doing? So, Marie, you need to get away from your computer.
I'm great. Here, I'll pass it on the...
Marie, you need to get away from your computer.
Here, I'll pass it on the...
Oops.
You need to get away from your computer. She can. She's on Skype.
Okay, here we go.
Marie, you cannot get away from the computer because you're on Skype, but on the lower right of the video, you'll see a volume control. It looks like a set of vertical bars. Click on the speaker and mute it.
Ah, I see. Okay.
All right, here you are. Wow. I'm so happy you got to call into us.
Me too. I'm so glad to be here and to have connected with you today. And I've been thinking of you often because what you offer has helped my brother so much. And as a young man who's figuring out different ways to be in contact with his mom in different forms, I know that his contact with you will mean a lot.
Well, I don't know how much you heard of the introduction when I was talking. I mean, how long have you been on? How long have you been listening?
Um, for about 5 minutes.
Okay, so you heard me talk some about your mom, right?
Just a little bit, not
Okay.
not too. I heard the glorious scene at the lemonade stand.
Oh, yeah. Well, your mother was just just like one of the most magnificent women I've ever met. And she had so much passion for everything. So I'm really happy to be here and to be dedicating the show to her. And I'm so glad you and I connected this morning to have this happen. So, your mom, tell everybody about your mom and why she was why was she this person who just always made lemonade?
I think from her growing up experiences, she sort of, throughout her whole life, kind of was confronted with difficult situations. And I mean, it seems to me that there's just, sorry, I'm trying to find my words. I'm excited to be here with you, but tired today. I think, well, I'll just go there because I know you do, and probably your listeners do too as well. I think that she was really committed to learning as much as she could, and that a lot about this lifetime for her has been being curious and learning as much as she can. So I think that in this life, she certainly was given many circumstances to learn, and a lot of difficult and often life-threatening circumstances, even from the time when she was a child. And she, with the help of others, with amazing circumstances, with, sort of a tenacity and good spirit of her own, would face difficult challenges and sort of say, nope, I'm not giving up, not just out of stubbornness, though she would be the first person to say that she was joyfully stubborn. But I think that just out of a willingness to say, well, what else is possible? What else is, I know these are the numbers that I have been given, but that's one way of looking at these things, these facts. That's one way of measurement. That might be the story for some people. And again, sort of not a denial of what she faced, be it, cancer in the last 7 years, or, living in dangerous neighborhoods growing up, or any number of other things, being the first woman lawyer, to be a partner in her firm, or, any kind of thing where the odds might be stacked against her. It wasn't about denying those odds, but sort of saying, well, there is a possibility for this to not crush me. I would like to be one of those people who is not crushed by these circumstances, and just being curious and trying to figure out how she could get there and how she could partner with other people to get there, and sort of just be open-hearted about what could help her face challenges.
And that's certainly a life lessons that we all strive for. And she did it, and she had all those numbers, as you said, and those odds, and she lived every day as if it was a lifetime. I think she took it on. Right?
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
So give us something like a story about your mom and how she did that. Like, what do you remember the most, looking back on how a particular story that she did, where she just squeezed them lemons?
Mm-hmm.
Can you think of one or two or 10?
Yeah, at least 10. She's such a storyteller. My brother, and I've been texting with him to see if he can tune on, but he reminded me of this one, so I'll share this one. My mom, she had to work full-time and go to school full-time to put herself through college, and so we are really grateful. She made it a big priority of hers to save up for my brother and I to be able to go to college, so we're very grateful for that. But she after, I think it was a summer between college, or one of the things she did right after she graduated, she worked for a Montessori school in DC, and it was located in some rough neighborhoods, many of, some of which she had grown up in the DC area. And she had all of these 2-year-olds. And she was taking care of these 2-year-olds at a Montessori school, and they were walking around. They were going to maybe one of the museums, and then walking back to the school. And she had them on a line, and she was getting them to pay attention to her and not, go into traffic or anything like that, by doing Simon Says. And so she would, do one thing and have them repeat it, So she would, put her hand on her head and say, "Oh yeah," and all the little 2-year-olds would, 2, 3-year-olds would have to put their hands on their heads and say, "Oh yeah." And she was walking across the street from this guy who started heckling her, and sort of something that many women have experienced in our lives, sort of seeing a woman passing by just as an object, as if, you can just say whatever you want, and, sort of demeaning things about how cute she was or her body or something like that. And then she didn't respond to him. She was taking care of all of these children. And, sorry, one second. It's echoing for me. Let's see. I'll just keep going. She didn't respond to him, and so he started calling her some curse words and different names. And so she had this one boy, I think his name was Kanyari, and this one little boy saw this guy across the street and maybe recognized him or thought he recognized him, and this guy who's yelling at my mom. It could turn into a dangerous situation with these little kids, and he just raised up his hand in the air, and he said, "Hey blood," which is like, "Hey brother, hey family." And this little tiny toddler raised up his little fist in there and said, "Hey blood." And so all the other little kids all just started going, "Hey blood, hey blood, hey blood." Like, "Hey family, hey brother." And it completely diffused the situation. And they all started laughing, and my mom started laughing, and this guy started laughing, and he said, "Okay, you can go, you can go." And I think that she just found herself in a lot of situations like that, where just sort of her good nature or the good nature of people around her would diffuse something that was difficult. So my brother was reminding me of that story recently, but there are many more. If you ask me about maybe a specific circumstance, I could share others as well.
Yeah, and I remember, and I have some different quotes and things that I'm going to put on the screen as we talk. But I remember when your mom, and I want everybody to know, this is not like talking about this woman and sharing these stories. This is not, there is a sadness attached, but it's not sad, because there's so much to have learned and to have experienced in this experience. And I remember when I visited her several years ago, when she was, not feeling great, and she, everybody was coming to the house, and she decorated, and I know the bed was in the living room or in the right, and the room was so decorated with jewels and colors and stones, and I mean, it was so beautiful in that room. You didn't realize you were on this earth. That was how she wanted her room to look when she was recuperating, right? I mean, it was fabric strung, and it was magical. It was always magical to be around her. Right?
Yes, it was. Yeah, she, when things were otherwise crappy, and pardon me if any words more strong than crappy come out, because we would reserve our cuss words for cancer related things. She would just sort of look to, well, life is for living. I'm going to live this as fully as I can for all of the moments that I'm here. And increasingly, what I've been studying in graduate school in communication and health communication is that the more we think, "Hey, I want to live fully now," often the longer we end up living. And that was really interesting to see that that was the case for her. And there's all of these things showing that, when you do things you love, if you're a bright and colorful person, like you're saying, jewels
Right.
everywhere, color everywhere, she became very creative in her adult life, actually. She had not always allowed herself to do visual art or other things, but sort of came to that in her sort of middle age, in her early 40s, I guess. So if that's something you love to do, then allowing yourself the time to do that, to be creative. There's all of this, there's a lot of studies in health communication showing that when people have a sense of purpose and when they feel like they're contributing to other people, and not even just receiving from people, but both receiving and contributing in social relationships, that can change the course of disease, that can reduce stress hormones in the body, that can reduce things that are causing inflammation in the body. And all of these things that sort of she did, and the ways that she would talk about just inviting positive connections in her life. And that's something that I want to be careful when I talk about, because actually now a lot of the research that I do is around communication around cancer, and there can be these sort of surface level conversations we have. And I think this is important for the theme of today about, making lemonade out of lemons. That it's not about creating this kind of fluffy, light surface. Hey, I'm a survivor. Nothing can beat me. I'm A-okay. Everything's clean and clear and pretty, which we especially see with breast cancer and pink ribbon campaigns that are about making everybody look cute and pretty and as if this is fun. And so much of this is not at all fun, and it really sucks a
Right.
lot. But there are things that we can do as individuals, working together and in community to change the course of how cancer and other diseases operate in our lives, and to not allow just one narrative to be true about how cancer operates in our lives. So there are various things in biomedicine that very much, can extend our life and include and improve the quality of our lives. But there's also things that she did, like reaching out to other people. And as you're saying, visiting her, when she was really sick, which a lot of people, some people will invite people in when they're feeling sick, and then others it's very difficult. And so, sort of looking back on this, I very much admire her willingness and her bravery to allow people in. And something that she figured out and said and shared, she dealt with a much smaller bout of breast cancer in 2004, and then it came back at stage 4 in 2006. When she dealt with this much smaller level in 2004, it was very hard for her to let people help her. She was very used to helping other people. As a healthcare lawyer, as someone who did lots of different community service things, and education and counseling and psychology things were always very important to her. She did like Stephen Ministry, which is sort of like lay counselors for people who are in crisis. It was very hard for her when people wanted to do everything for her. And so she began to see and realize through that first experience, in ways that I think very much influenced when cancer was much more serious. She learned through that first experience, and told me, actually, and I think probably told to lots of other people, it's actually a gift to allow others in. Because if we all think about when someone near to us is not doing well for whatever reason, be it illness or otherwise, we want to do something to help.
Right.
And it helps us to be able to connect with them in some way, to spend time with them in some way, to, bring a meal or to go on a walk or to do any of these things. It's actually helping those other people feel good.
Right. And on the screen right now, just so you know, I have a quote that says, "Life isn't about waiting for the storm to pass. Life is about learning to dance in the rain." Just so you know, and that's what she did. She just instinctively knew how to do that. And people sometimes, they know how to do that, but then they have teachers who show them how to do that. Who show them at their worst how they dance in the rain. And what you're talking about with your mother, yeah, she figured out a way to make it so that this was her life. However short, however long, this was her life, and she had an acceptance about it. And she made the most of what time she had regardless. I mean, she wasn't clear if she was going to make it to your wedding.
Right.
And you just had your wedding.
Right.
So can you just share that? Because I can remember years ago her talking to me about you getting married.
Yeah.
So talk about that experience, because that's, that's a blessing.
It is. And I hope that with all of this, as we talk about this, something that was really important to Barbara was to ask to be of service. She's like, I don't know why the heck all this is happening, but, we all have different names for God or highest good. And for her, she would say, God, please use me. Let me be of service. I do not know what this is all about, but if I can be of service in this in some way, I would love that. And so as we share these sort of individual stories about this special person, she was always very clear to try and share ways that her being honest about her own experiences, including aspects of health justice and aspects of healing, be about many people that face cancer, that face depression, that face difficult circumstances that we could sort of shift our status quo of response on. So I just wanted to give that kind of caveat as we talk about these personal stories, that this is something that, of course, opens the door much wider for things that many of us deal with. So to answer your question, Marilyn, it was my mom and I am very lucky because many people have to sort of choose their family in their adult life by making friends if they had a hard growing up experience. And that was very much the case for both of my parents. They had hard growing up experiences. And so I think my brother and I are very lucky to have parents that we're close to. And so my mom was definitely my longest running best friend. And she was very excited about my partnership to the wonderful human and partner I'm married to now, Andrew. And, I think within 1 year of our dating, she began giving him books at Christmas that were children's books. Which you're laughing, she's a very straightforward person. She's like, well, I just love the design. The pop-up is so cool. And Andrew is an artist. He's a photographer and filmmaker. So I thought he would like, how cool this design is. And he's a web designer. It's really neat, the images. So, and whoever he's a dad for, he'll just be able to use this. But we sort of got the message on that. And it was several years before we proposed to each other. But we realized we actually had an initial date for our wedding. It was very hard because when you're dealing with a chronic or advanced or metastatic cancer or life-threatening illness of any form with a dear family member or a dear friend, even in times when the person is doing very, very well, because there are entire, multi-year periods where she wasn't on chemotherapy at all. And she was told initially that there would never be a time where she was off of chemotherapy. And she was told she would have 3 or 6 months, and it ended up being almost 7 years, which is really miraculous and a series of miracles made by a lot of love and a lot of people. And, a lot of good and God happening all in there. So when you don't know what will happen, even when someone is feeling very well, there's this thing in the back of your mind always. So that was always hard to balance with what our lives were and are as young people, my finishing school, my then starting graduate school, Andrew, working for a couple of years, and then Andrew running a business. And it ended up that I was in a very sort of hellish process with my master's, and Andrew was transitioning out of a job in a way that was painful for him at the time. And it just became clear, and our wedding venue fell through. And here we are, with, of course, it's he and I that are getting married, but of course we want my mom to be there and for her to be well, and she was feeling really well at this time in 2012. And so it was a really hard decision for us to make, to say, this is not the right time for us. There's many things falling into place to say this is sort of falling through at this moment, the time for the wedding. So we decided to postpone our wedding, and I know that was hard, but we wanted to leave room for dance and good and God and space, and to not be in the midst of this tumult and chaos. We were both going, so we rescheduled it for this month.
What? Wait, Marie, we just we lost a little bit of what you just said.
Oh, okay. So we rescheduled our wedding to this past summer in 2013, and then sort of all of a sudden, there were some health difficulties, but not at a crisis level. We sort of got an unexpected news of there's liver failure and a 2-week notice of, her body will no longer be with us. And all at that same time, and this was in the beginning of June, and our wedding was scheduled for July 20th. And this is sort of hard to talk about, but the way that the doctor sort of let us know what the time frame would be was my mom's first question. And so it is a blessing the way this all happened. But her first question to the oncologist when she got bad news was, will I make it to Marie's wedding on July 20th? And I was on the phone at the time because I had to leave to go teach a class. And the doctor said, I need to call you back. And then her answer to my mom was, no, I don't think you will be on July 20th. And so what ended up happening was a dear friend of ours who's like a sister to both my mom and I, and just an incredible artist and creative person, was hosting another wedding in her yard, this magical Garden of Eden with a fig tree in it, her yard, which is in the neighborhood that my parents live in and that Hunter and I grew up in. And she just came over the morning after that Sunday wedding and said, I'm taking you, you're coming to my house. And we went in her yard, and she just turned on this music, and we danced all through her yard. And I remembered it was sort of like a dream. She was running around picking plums off of her trees. She's this incredible gardener and artist. Her name is Jenny. And we were just dancing, and she was hitting me these plums while we were dancing and sort of blessing and reclaiming the space. And she said, I think you need to have your wedding here. And I think you need to have it this week. And we have all of the things from this other wedding that I've just hosted. And it was quite incredible. And I'm not a person who has spent, all my life dreaming of, this is my one day, and I know exactly what my dress is going to look like, and I have my colors picked out, and everyone's judging me based on my taste of what colors I choose for my wedding. But to the extent I'd thought about it, I wanted green and white and moss, because Andrew and I had proposed to each other in Iceland, where there's a lot of very magical moss. And we now live in a home that has moss growing all around it, and just love it. And this woman had gotten married and decorated her wedding with green and white lanterns and ribbons and moss.
What are the chances of that?
And so it was very beautiful. It was very, very beautiful. And my mom got to be there to hold my hand along with, she and my dad held my hand and put my hand in Andrew's hand, and her body was definitely trooping through at that point, but her spirit was so alive. It was just shining through her, there was a sort of, and I hope this is okay to talk about. I don't know.
Yeah, talk about anything you want to talk about. This show is called, the show, I talked to you so fast this morning, I don't even know if you know the name of the show. It's called Breaking Free. All
right, cool.
So anything we want to talk about, we can. This is certainly a testament to freedom, so. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so, when someone has a 2-week notice of your body's going to stop working, at first things were going very well, but then there's sort of a rapid physical decline. And actually, looking back on this, I've thought often about, or, a few times at least, about the fact that sort of despite physical circumstances, often Barbara's spirit just shone through very brightly. And, she would just find ways to be out and about because she was go get them. Let's, take on the day, even when I feel like crap and I'm tired with chemo. Okay, I'll take a nap. But when I get up, I'm going to go walk outside at this place near our home called Hemlock Bluffs, this nature preserve, and that'll rejuvenate me. And then I'll be able to go about my day and, just sort of embracing what each day brought. So to see this rapid physical decline, which some listeners may have experienced with their own dear people or friends or family members, that can be very hard, for the person to experience this physical decline. And one of the best things about Barbara was sort of her sharpness and sense of humor, and making jokes and bringing light to dark spaces. So I think one of the things she was most sort of scared about when she was honest about this, which, she was often honest in dealing with things, confronting things that are both good and scary. I think she did not want things to go to her brain. I think that was something she had seen other friends who faced stage 4 cancers have happen, and just get very confused and agitated because of the chemicals, going through the body at that point, and a way that, organs function when that happens. And so it was very interesting that really kind of out of the blue, something else happened with her body, and the physical decline period was rapid but shorter. And so it was just interesting to see how, even though she was going through that process, to have someone you love in the last few days of their being present with you, be in an evening gown and just celebrate and smile, even through, their eyes sort of flickering in and out. And you can tell that they're so there, even if their physical form has shifted.
Well, she had an unusual container, I think. Her container, I think she, I don't know how to even explain it. It's interesting. Michelle on the chat said lemonade transformation, but she had an interesting container. She didn't have your regular, or at least maybe we don't always access it the way she did. She showed us how big a container can be and how much you can carry, and yet, and I don't know how to put this into words, but she definitely was big.
Yeah.
In a way that was not. She was so. It's kind of like she was so vibrated so simply that it was so high.
Yes, very much so.
Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
So let me ask you a question. How did she prepare you?
All the time and in many ways. I think I knew that she talked to many friends of hers about continuing to be friends with me. And it's very interesting, looking back through her books and all these things. She was such a researcher. She was so curious. If I had to pick, a few words to describe this wonderful spirit, I would say curiosity, a sense of curiosity or being curious is one of the top ones. So whenever she wanted to learn about something, she would just get a bunch of books on it. She called herself a book addict. And, I think you probably saw that in ways that you mentored Hunter, my younger brother, Marilyn. With different things coming up in his life, she would just pick out 12 books and read everything she could on it. Connecting with your teenage son or whatever it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I remember when I met your mom and I met Hunter, I think for the first time. I mean, I think he was either 11 or 12, Marie, and he was not a bad boy. I mean, he was a good boy. I mean, sometimes people bring have this notion that you either go to or you help somebody else go to somebody for help when things are bad. And I'm not a therapist, but I often say that what I do is therapeutic, but I'm not a therapist. I'm a coach. And, I've worked with kids, women, men, teenagers, couples, families, whatever. But it's not always bad. Sometimes people come and there's a really tough nut to crack, some really tough situation, some issue, and, it's tough. And then other people show up just to have more of a good thing. Your mother brought Hunter, I remember it like it was yesterday, just because she wanted him to connect more with his spirituality. And she felt in some way that I could help him do that. And that's what she wanted. He wasn't bad in school. He was a good kid in school. He played soccer. He wasn't getting any, bad grades. He wasn't getting into trouble with friends. He wasn't doing bad things. And the interesting thing is, I do this thing called heart math. You remember that? And it's a non-invasive form of biofeedback. And one of the things you have to do is you have to recall something that brings you joy. That every time you think about it, this feeling comes over you of joy and appreciation and gratitude. So I remember doing that with Hunter. And I said, so what's the first thing you think about, Hunter? And he says to me, and I'll probably cry. So he said, when your whole family was in Hawaii, right? And he would think about you and how much he loved you as his sister. And this is the boy your mother brought to me. This 11, 12-year-old kid who was just so great, who I got to work with because she knew in where she came from that this kid was somebody special.
Wow.
And she wanted him to have whatever there was, whatever he could open up to, that he would, experience his specialty, his specialness. And I used to tell him that he was an emissary of light. That James Twyman book, Emissaries of Light. Did you ever see that book?
No, I will need
to. Yeah, because it was a great, great book. And Hunter always reminded me of this emissary of light, that he was going to bring light into the world, regardless of who he was, young boys and growing up and whoever it was, that he would do this. And this is the kid your mother brought to me. She had that kind of insight and that kind of love. And she knew the things that mattered most. And, I remember that like it was yesterday. And I was telling Marie this morning, one of my favorite lines that I ever got from anybody came from Barbara Garlock. She looked at me one day and she said, "You're so good with him." And I looked at her and I said, "I'm not you. I'm just like you, but I'm not you. I'm mom just like you. I love this boy, as if he was my own, but I'm not you. I can say things to him that he'll listen to." And she knew that. And it's just such an honor to have this experience. And I know that she dropped these beautiful things along the way, these beautiful messages, these beautiful experiences along the way that she just knew. She knew how to prepare you and Hunter for life, regardless of what happened to her. Like you.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm looking at the live chat and I saw someone say something about resistance in the mirror when you say, I love you, I accept you completely, I approve of you completely. And that's really funny because when I was in middle school, and I believe she also did this with my brother, my mom had us look in the mirror in middle school of all times and say to ourselves, I like me. I love me. I am great at, and we would pick something we were great at. I have lots of friends. I care about people. People care about me.
That's right.
And we, of course, hated that because we were in middle school. But she was persistent and she got us to do those things. And I really do now as an adult, 27. So appreciate that. And I don't know if you'll have seen the parody of this by Al Franken on SNL. I actually met Al Franken when he came to my college, when I was in college, and I told him my mom made me do that, the Stuart Smiley. I like me, I love me, gosh darn it, I'm great. And he said, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I can't believe anyone would actually do that. And I said, no, actually, it was great, and I'm grateful. It's real stuff. She wasn't afraid to, pull back curtains and say, I need to tell you I love you, and I need to tell you that often, and I need to tell you to do what you dream of doing, not just what you think you're supposed to do. And it was very important to her to set up systems of support for us as her family, I think, through the many wide networks of friends she had and circles she cast, working as a hospital. She worked as a volunteer hospital chaplain in the last several years. She was certified as a pastoral counselor when dealing with cancer had stopped her initially from going back to school for divinity school. She did all kinds. One of her dreams was to start a center for patient partnerships, which would help people navigate our very broken healthcare systems, which in ongoing ways we see is needed. And she was going to use her career as a healthcare lawyer and then go back to school for divinity and social work to create these partnerships with schools in the area around divinity and theology, and counseling around psychology, public health, medicine, social work, law, like legal aid clinics, but to help people navigate the paperwork, the bureaucracy, hard medical decisions, all those things, sort of like a free clinic you could go to help with difficult things in the healthcare system. But she had to stop going to school for that because a few weeks in, she found out that she had stage 4 cancer. And that's what all the pain in her body was coming from. And so it's just very interesting the ways that it happened through all these other different networks in the years subsequent to that, between 2006 and 2013. She was certified as a hospital chaplain, a volunteer hospital chaplain. She did emergency assistance with people in many different agencies, people who couldn't pay their bills that month or were in health crisis or were running from domestic violence or, lost their job, couldn't afford their housing anymore, and would work to connect them to resources. And, she began to do things that were fun for her too. So she had this whole other friend network that she started with the North Carolina Museum of Art, becoming a docent there and just allowing herself to have fun for the sake of having fun because she loved art. And she said that's probably the most fun she ever had in her life was the last few years becoming a docent at the North Carolina Museum of Art in Raleigh. And so she had all these networks of friends from these different circles that she moved in. And she would just be very open. She would pull back the curtain, so to speak, and say, I want to be here for a long time, but I'm dealing with serious cancer. And so this is probably what will be the reason why I pass away, my physical form. And
I want to
so
ask you, can I ask you a question?
Uh-huh.
So do you think the fact that she knew, some people would take the fact that they know something like that and not move, but what did it do to her? I mean, that is such an extraordinary thing. knowing that she may not have that much time, or she may not live till 70 or 80 or 60. What do you think that did for her?
I think it got her to say, it's interesting. I think it got her to do everything she was already doing, but more fully. So it's interesting. I saw for her personally, and different people have different journeys, that in her early and mid 40s, she dealt with depression pretty severely as she was realizing that she didn't want to work in healthcare law anymore. And this was something she was open about with people after she had dealt with it. So I feel okay saying that. And, as a way to reduce our stigma around how many people deal with severe depression and anxiety. And in that kind of dark period, or a certainly dark and difficult period, she made a lot of different changes in her life and, wanted to be there to spend time with my brother as he was growing up and with me. And she began to deal with a lot of the past hurt. I saw somebody else write in the chat too, of people, keeping things under the surface and not dealing with their past pain. And so in her early 40s, she started to deal with some of that past pain of her growing up years and just work on she did many things, but work on various forgiveness practices. And then also what the EFT, I don't know if some people have heard of that, the emotional freedom technique. Yeah.
Yes.
And she did that often and a lot around particular people that had put her in danger, caused her harm, or circumstances or memories, and worked on releasing those things as much as she was able to do. And then after that time, she dealt with cancer. And so I think that interim period between dealing with depression and dealing with cancer, so much work happened on a spiritual and a soul level in a way that I hope can be of service or, of interest to other people. That when you go through one level of processing and releasing, that then opens you up for more beyond that. Of course, that's intuitive, but I think that having done that helped her then face cancer with the circumstances of illness, with a willingness to say, all right, well, how can I deal with the things that matter to me more fully? So already she had been someone who connected with lots of friends. And I think after the process of dealing with depression really opened up through her connection with a couple of very special people, particularly some artist friends, Jenny and Kimberly, to being creative in her own life and, allowing herself to make art and do art and express herself, visually was a medium that she enjoyed, and she would just pick up all these different ways to express herself. So I think those resources of wanting to be of service in her own community, to want to be creative and want to connect to other human beings, those were things that were important to her already, and so she just amplified them all the more with this idea of there's a limited physical time for you.
And when you talk about her, when you speak about her, you speak, pretty much in the present.
Yeah, it's interesting. I talk about, she's obviously not in her physical form anymore, but I just spoke with a friend, one of Andrew's colleagues, they're working at our house today, downstairs, and he was saying something that many people have reflected to me, and that he as a scientist knows that energy doesn't stop, it just goes into a different form.
Right, right.
So this time period has been all about figuring out new ways for someone that I'm very used to talking to on the phone and in person and visiting with quite often.
Yeah.
To then figure out, well, I can't have lines quite that direct for our human understanding, but there are all kinds of ways that she comes through intuitively and things that happen in the natural world around me. Just wild circumstances with crows, which were a very special bird to her, that will surround me at certain times, will do the most fascinating things interacting with me. Crows will interact with me now. Certain things like there's a period where butterflies were landing all around me and just like staying on my hand. One even landed on my chest, on my heart, and stayed there and didn't move.
Wow.
Just these ways of communicating in the natural world, and then also through circumstances that happen, and a couple of times some dreams and other things, things that many people experience, whether that is soon after or many years after their loved one
Well,
transition.
I think what you just described is exactly how she lived her life. I mean, she didn't live it as just the human form. She lived it as an energetic form. And so everything she did was in that space of, being energy. That's how she did everything she did. Here's this was a joke, really, and I put it up, one of the quotes that I just put up on the screen. And sometimes sometimes something that's serious, we learn it really better when there's some humor attached. So I just had this up and I want to read it. Of course, sometimes life pulls down your pants, runs a power sander across your naked butt, then pours lemon juice on your raw, shaded buttocks. In that case, a cool citrus drink wouldn't really help, but darn it, you've got to hang in there anyway. And then this morning, I got a Neil Donald Walsh. I get his quotes every morning. And I look forward to them because I really believe they're talking to me. I really, it's like he's really talking to me. So this morning it was this, that God is talking to me, and that less and less do you need to force things until you finally arrive at non-action. This is the message of the Tao Te Chang, and it is true. Werner Arthart has taught, life will resolve itself in the process of life itself. Byron Katie says that liberation is loving what is. And Stephen Mitchell calls non-action the purest and most effective form of action. The game plays the game, the poem writes the poem. We can't tell the dancer from the dance. Perhaps the best thing you can do right now is nothing at all. And I feel like she accepted, the dance. And even though we talk about making lemonade from lemons, she did that. And then at some point you do make an exception or acceptance, and you go on the path of what there is, and you make the most of the path. And then that one, the first one on the screen that I'm going to just put back is when you can't make, hold on a minute. When life gives you lemons, make lemon cookies. So, we have so much to learn from these experiences. You have this woman who, battled, I don't even want to use the word that I was just going to choose. When you have this woman who's learning from cancer, how to, live her best life, share, have the most she can have, and teach the rest of us how to do that with every bit of life that we go through. It is a dedication, and a thank you, Barbara Garlock, for being in my life and talking to me in the last couple of months, because she has kept talking to me, and I kept looking for her, not knowing that her energy was talking to me, but her body wasn't here. And I thank her for you and I connecting again and catching up and being able to share this beautiful lifetime of stories.
Absolutely. And something to close is, for me, sort of reflecting on what this conversation has been. And, I apologize if I rambled at points because I didn't know all of what this would be. I'm just so grateful to be here on your show and with what I know is an incredible community of listeners. Something, just reflecting on what we've talked about, that feels important to share is that these ways of our receiving guidance while on the path we're on, of embracing what is, can actually serve not just as psychological coping mechanisms, but can in fact shift what the path is or how we move down the path. So it's not just about how we think that we're moving down the path, but in shifting what we do, it shifts sometimes the path itself. So what I mean specifically by that is this embrace of social support, which there's all this science behind people who have relationships that they both give and receive in, positive social relationships. Illness functions differently in them and doesn't take as serious of a toll when there's social support present. So the fact that that was so important to her and was her inclination to reach out to people when dealing with life-threatening illness, that I think was a huge part of the fact that she dealt with it for as long as she did and did not leave from her physical form right away. The fact that she embraced creativity and prayer and connecting to the divine through co-creativity, that very much was about enjoying this day, this moment, our capacities to connect the human and the divine. But I think that was a huge part as well of, almost 7 years versus 3 or 6 months.
Yes. Yes, no question.
And her curiosity about nutrition and, emotional freedom technique and, learning as much as she could about healing her body, walking outside in the woods, moving her body, being in her body, finally loving her body is something that she said she got to, which was very profound for her because, many of us deal with not loving our bodies. Right. And so all of those things of, walking outside, putting good food and living food into her body, which was something very sort of foreign to her from difficult growing up circumstances, and low income. Those things were about her seizing this day. And then I also think they were, and living to the best capacity she could each day. And then I think that in turn gave her more days. So isn't that great?
Yeah, it is. It is. And I know that there's so much more we could share about your trips to Africa. We're going to have you come back again, okay?
Okay.
Because I know you have some remarkable stories, and there's more to share. That's what's so wonderful about people, and why this is so great to be able to do this, because we get to share people, and that's we're the most important things there are, our feelings and how we connect, just like you said. And it's just been such a delight to have you here, and thank you for every breath and every moment you shared with us and every word. Remember that, okay? Just everything you have shared. And your mother knows this, She's gotten us together, so it's just been perfect. So just know that. And I want to thank everybody for sharing this experience with us. It's been just fabulous to have you here. And I want to wish you all a wonderful day. Marie, you know we have to get together and Hunter, right?
Yep, let's do it.
Okay, so we're going to do that. You got an email from me. We're going to make something happen. Okay?
Yes.
Okay, and I love you a lot, so thank you. And everybody out there, thank you for being here today. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, Health In with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Lessons of Vietnam with NCVVI members, The Tanya Love Show, Reawaken Your Brilliance with Julie Seibert, and if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it at www.nissancommunications.com. Sponsored by Atomus.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters for professionals. That vidblasterguy.com, carolinaapparel.com, and deltaforce.net.